You sit in a dim corner of the room, candlelight dancing slowly across the damp stone walls, and the air carries the scent of aged metal and long-stored spices. Slowly, you realize there is something different here, a strange yet captivating calm, as if time itself has paused, waiting to be observed. You are invited to take a deep breath, letting yourself sink into the atmosphere. Noticing the soft drip of water from the ceiling pooling on the rough floor. Here, every shadow has a story. Every corner conceals secrets never heard above the busy streets of Paris. Your mind begins to open to unusual possibilities, and your body feels the subtle vibrations of an unseen energy. You are welcomed to walk slowly through the narrow basement, touching the cold walls that seem to hold the memories of Parisian alchemists who dared to explore the boundaries of knowledge. Your eyes catch a glass flask resting on a wooden table cluttered with chemical residue, its surface reflecting light in an unusual way, as if holding a flame that cannot be extinguished. You start to feel that something lives in silence, an experiment that refuses to obey ordinary natural laws. Your body and mind are enveloped in gentle curiosity without fear, only pure and calm wonder. You hear your own footsteps echoing on the stone floor, giving rhythm to the quiet, and every breath takes you deeper into a world that can only be felt, not explained. Here, you are welcomed not by the noise of the city, but by whispers of history, by traces of alchemists who dedicated their lives to mystery, to forbidden knowledge that has now become legend and shadow. You are introduced to patience, to deep observation, to the beauty found in experiments undisturbed by the outside world. You begin to understand that this experience is not about finding answers quickly, but about allowing yourself to absorb the wonder wrapped in calm and mystery. And in this still atmosphere, you are gently invited to remain, watching a small secret slowly reveal itself over time, like a story told softly to a child who wishes to hear more than words can explain the year 1673. Paris moved slowly beneath a mist that cloaked the Seine, a city full of contrasts between the grandeur of palaces and the winding, narrow alleys. You walk along cobblestone streets, hearing the echo of horse-drawn carriages against ancient walls, and the scent of warm bread mingles with the smoke of burning wood in the air. Yet beneath this bustling city lies another world, hidden in basements known to only a few. You enter a quiet corridor where the sounds of the outside world fade, replaced by a heavy and mysterious calm. Oil lamps hanging from the ceiling cast a soft yellow light on stone walls, revealing traces of history etched in cracks and stains. Here, the last experiments of the Parisian alchemists are underway, a place where knowledge and imagination converge, and ordinary natural laws seem only flexible guidelines. You see ancient instruments, pipettes, measuring glasses, and glass flasks glowing softly on a table cluttered with chemical residue, each object telling of dedication and obsession that never ends. The alchemists work carefully, noting every temperature change, every color shift, even every aroma emerging from reactions that seem to defy simple logic. You feel like a silent eye observing a different world, where each small action has large consequences, and each experiment holds the possibility of discovery or repeated failure. The air is heavy with fine particles, dust mingling with the scent of chemicals. And you can feel the subtle tension whenever the alchemists approach the flask that refuses to cool. They speak in low voices, citing ancient theories and references, like chants passed down through generations, guarding secrets that cannot be shared with outsiders. You realize that behind these experiments lies an effort to understand things beyond ordinary sight, to uncover the mysteries of the universe through methods that sometimes seem like magic, yet are rooted in careful observation and extraordinary precision. Here, in the dark corridors of Paris, the unseen world invites you to pause, steady your breath, and let yourself be absorbed by the slow rhythm of science that exists at the edge of reality and imagination. You begin to explore further into the dim basement, your steps slow in rhythm with a calm yet alert heartbeat. The damp stone walls are coated with a thin layer of moss, as if preserving time long gone, and the scent of chemicals mixed with warm moisture produces a strange sensation in your nose. At the center of the old wooden table, the glass flask stands gracefully, enduring the continuously rising heat, yet remaining intact, as if challenging the physical principles you know. Around the flask, test tubes, retorts, and metal plates are arranged meticulously, each bearing signs of heavy use, stains and crusts indicating repeated experiments over many years. You notice the alchemist's handwritten notes, ink fading, but each letter still telling of extraordinary precision and patience. Every gentle spark from chemical reactions in the flask sounds like a subtle music audible only to patient ears. You realize that the alchemists are not merely attempting to transform substances. They study the order of nature, patterns often hidden from ordinary view, and they do so with deep patience, allowing the process itself to become their teacher. The air around you trembles faintly, every breath bringing awareness that this is a world between reality and possibility, where experiments are not just about outcomes, but about understanding how nature responds to the presence of meticulous and curious humans. Candlelight dances across the flask's surface, casting shadows that slowly move across the walls, as if visualizing the history of experiments conducted over many years. You sit for a moment in the corner, letting your gaze merge with the gentle rhythm of the laboratory, observing how silence can convey information and how even the smallest detail can reveal larger secrets. In that stillness, you feel a connection with alchemists long gone, as if they left subtle yet powerful traces, inviting you to understand the world through observation, patience, and insatiable curiosity. In another corner of the basement, you see wooden shelves filled with bottles and containers of various shapes and sizes. Some contain clear liquids, others appear cloudy with fine sediment, and some shine with colors that are almost indescribable. You realize that each bottle tells its own story, traces of experiments repeated over time, efforts to understand the properties of substances that seem simple yet hold profound complexity. Among the bottles, there are sheets of paper filled with formulas and notes in Latin and Old French, revealing methods of patience, repeated observation, and a desire to comprehend the world from its foundations. The air here feels heavier, not merely from heat or humidity, but from the concentration built by focused and diligent presence. You walk slowly, touching the shelves with your fingertips, feeling the rough texture of wood and the stains marking long years of use. Every small detail evokes respect and admiration for the dedication of the alchemists who worked here, attempting to push beyond knowledge that cannot be explained by ordinary reason. In the silence, the drip of liquid from a tube into a glass can be heard, and you notice how each drop triggers a small reaction. A subtle color change, a faint but distinct aroma. You sense that this process is not only mechanical, but also meditative, where full attention and patience are key to uncovering nature's mysteries. The candlelight glimmers softly, casting shadows on the walls that seem to dance with the rhythm of the laboratory. You sit for a moment on the cold stone floor, observing all the instruments and notes, feeling how history and knowledge blend into one, creating an atmosphere where time seems to slow, allowing pure curiosity to grow. In this quiet, you can sense an aura of knowledge not only stored in books and notes, but also in the air, in the objects, and in the way the alchemists viewed the walk. The alchemists viewed the youth's world as if waiting for someone patient enough to grasp the hidden meanings behind experiments that seem simple yet contain profound secrets. In the deepest part of the basement, you find a work table filled with remnants of previous experiments, yellowed papers, fine dust clinging to the wooden surface, and tools used tirelessly over the years. Every object here seems to hold the energy of time, a history of relentless curiosity and dedication that feels almost sacred. You walk slowly, touching the cold surface of the table, feeling the cracked texture of the wood and the dried traces of spilled chemicals. In the corner, the glass flask that refuses to cool remains upright, its constant heat-defying reason inviting you to question the laws of nature long assumed to be certain. Candlelight reflects on the surface of the flask, creating a mesmerizing shimmer and shadows that move slowly across the stone walls. You observe the scattered alchemist's notes, intricate handwriting, ancient symbols that almost resemble a secret language, suggesting rituals and methods passed down through generations. The sound of liquid dripping into a glass resonates like soft music, a rhythm both calming and meaningful, as if each drop carries hidden information understood only through patience and careful observation. The air around you feels heavy yet comforting, filled with the scent of metal, spices, and chemicals blending with the basement's moisture, creating an atmosphere difficult to describe yet captivating to the senses. You sit for a moment, letting your eyes follow every detail, from tiny splashes on the instruments to the flickering shadows on the walls. You realize that every experiment is not only about visible results, but about the process itself, about understanding the subtle interactions between substances, time, and human attention. A natural sense of respect arises for those who have worked here. Alchemists who devoted their lives to exploring the limits of knowledge and mystery. And in that quiet, you feel invited to witness, to experience a world existing between science and magic, logic and imagination, a place where calm wonder can be observed, appreciated, and gradually understood. The following morning, as the first light seeped through the stone cracks, you watch the alchemists begin preparing their instruments. Their hands move with trained precision, arranging glass tubes, weighing fine powders, pouring liquids with an almost ritualistic care. You sit in the corner, observing each movement, noticing how every step carries purpose and meaning, though it may seem trivial to an outsider. The air is filled with the scent of chemicals mingled with the smell of candle wax and burnt wood, creating an atmosphere that seems to transcend time. On the central table, the glass flask that refuses to cool radiates a gentle heat as if it has a life of its own. And whenever an alchemist approaches, their eyes scrutinize the smallest, almost imperceptible changes. You begin to realize that their experiments are not merely about seeking instant results, but about understanding the nature of substances, the process of transformation, and the subtle interaction between matter and energy. Every note they write, every symbol they draw, is their way of recording a world that cannot be explained with ordinary words. You hear the faint friction of test tubes, liquids slowly boiling, and aromas arising from complex mixtures that only experience can interpret. In between these actions are long moments of silence, where the alchemists gaze at the flask, take notes, and sometimes close their eyes to sense subtle energy shifts. You feel the rhythm of the day, almost like music, audible only to the patient and precise. Candlelight flickers, casting slowly moving shadows on the walls, as if visualizing the energy of the experiments themselves. In that stillness, you begin to understand that these alchemists live in a world where science and art merge, where patience and observation are the primary tools, and every action carries consequences only discernible with time. You realize that your presence here is not merely as a witness, but as part of this subtle rhythm, a part of the observation process that honors meticulousness and deep curiosity, allowing you to absorb an atmosphere of mystery that is gentle yet powerful. As the day progresses, you begin to witness more intense moments in the alchemist's experiments. The glass flask that refuses to cool becomes the center of attention. Its constant heat seemingly defying logic, radiating energy that can be felt in the surrounding air. You see the alchemists carefully drop dark-colored liquids, stirring slowly, and recording almost imperceptible changes from thin vapors rising to subtle glimmers shifting across the flask surface. A sense of mystery hangs in the air, knowledge that seems forbidden yet arranged with scientific precision. In another corner lie remnants of previous experiments, powdered metals and faintly sparkling crystals, marking failures and successes intertwined, forming a secret history only comprehensible to those present. You feel a subtle tension whenever the alchemists emphasize observation, noting minor details that may seem trivial but could alter the course of an experiment. The scent of chemicals and the heat of the flask mingle with the aroma of candle wax and damp stone, creating a strange yet captivating atmosphere, as if you were in another world waiting to be understood. You begin to realize that each experiment is not merely about discovering something tangible, but also about testing the limits of knowledge, seeking answers to questions that ordinary logic cannot resolve. Candle shadows dance on the walls, forming silhouettes that resemble ancient symbols, reminding that this science is rooted in long traditions and tightly guarded secrets. You notice how each movement, every drop of liquid, every note written, is part of a complex rhythm, a pattern guiding the alchemists to interpret an unseen world. There is an odd beauty in this meticulousness, a combination of dedication, patience, and unending curiosity. In that quiet, you feel yourself becoming part of the observation process, absorbing information not only stored in notes or instruments, but also in the air, in the candlelight, in the energy slowly flowing around the flask that refuses to cool, a gentle yet unavoidable mystery that continuously draws your attention and curiosity. As dusk begins to seep through the stone cracks, you watch how the soft light gradually transforms the laboratory's atmosphere. The alchemists remain focused on their work, adjusting temperatures, adding materials slowly, and observing reactions with remarkable precision. You notice that the glass flask that refuses to cool is not merely an object. It feels like a living witness to ongoing experiments, holding secrets that may never be fully revealed. In a corner, there is a container with a thick liquid that appears almost like smoke trapped inside the bottle, and you can sense the faint vibrations of energy produced by this reaction. Every movement of the alchemists is deliberate, not simply following procedure, but understanding the subtle interaction between substances, heat, and time. You sit for a moment, letting your eyes track every detail, from tiny droplets falling to almost imperceptible color changes, slowly realizing the complexity hidden behind what seems simple. There is a dark undertone to these experiments, not in the form of overt danger, but in the awareness that they are dealing with knowledge that may be forbidden, testing the boundaries of nature and possibilities that cannot always be predicted. The scent of chemicals mingles with dampness and candle wax, creating an intense yet calm atmosphere, calling for deep patience and curiosity. Candle shadows dance on the walls, as if bringing every motion, every subtle change, to life, giving a gentle rhythm to this seemingly still activity. You begin to feel the tranquil yet attentive rhythm of the day, where every second holds significance and every observation matters. In that silence, you realize that these alchemists are not mere researchers. They are keepers of mysteries, interpreting a hidden world beyond visible facts, understanding natural laws through patient and precise experiments, and safeguarding knowledge perhaps never meant to be shared. You are invited to remain there, witnessing the slow but consistent process, feeling how the world beneath Paris continues to live with secrets observable only by those willing to pay attention. Night deepens, yet you remain there, watching the tireless alchemists continue their experiments. The softly glowing candles create a silent atmosphere filled with focus, and the shadows moving across the walls seem to follow the rhythm of hand-stripping liquids, stirring fine powders, or writing notes carefully. You see how each step is thoughtfully executed, as if they are communicating with the materials themselves, understanding how metals, liquids, and crystals respond to human touch and applied heat. The air feels tense yet calming, filled with faint chemical scents, a mix of burnt wood and soft candle wax. There is a dark reality hidden in these experiments, not an immediate danger to you, but in the awareness that the alchemists are testing boundaries that perhaps should not be touched. You observe remnants of previous reactions, stains on the table, deposits left in tubes, all telling stories of repeated successes and failures. You feel as though you are part of this world, though only as an observer, sensing a subtle yet real energy flowing around the glass flask that refuses to cool. Each drop of liquid sounds like a musical note, Each color change conveys information interpretable only with patience and precision. You sit slowly, observing how focused attention on small details builds a broader understanding, how patience becomes a tool for interpreting nature, and how mystery remains even after much has been recorded and observed. Candle shadows dancing on the walls seem to visualize the history of experiments and the alchemists' journeys, reflecting dedication that is almost sacred toward the knowledge they pursue. You sense that this place is not merely a laboratory, but a world of its own, where science, art, and mystery blend into one. In the silence of the night, begin to understand that witnessing here means absorbing the gentle rhythm that connects humans with nature, process with result, and patience with knowledge continually unfolding. There is a subtle yet real depth in every motion, every observation, and every falling drop, forming an experience that is not only scientific, but also captivating to the senses and mind. Night deepens, and the silence of the basement grows even denser. Yet the alchemists continue their work with a calm but attentive rhythm. Do you notice how they transfer liquids from one tube to another, weigh fine powders, and drop substances with nearly perfect precision? The glass flask that refuses to cool radiates its heat into the air, and you can feel the subtle energy surrounding it, a force that seems alive on its own. On the table, notes filled with symbols and ancient formulas reveal almost sacred dedication. Each line and dot carrying meaning understood only by those who devote their lives to this science. You begin to realize that these experiments are not merely scientific trials, but also a profound meditation, a way for the alchemists to communicate with matter, heat, and time, attempting to understand patterns hidden within the universe. The scent of chemicals, candle wax, and burnt wood blend into something both familiar and strange, creating an atmosphere that is calming yet evokes curiosity. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow every movement, observing how each drop of liquid, each color change, and each rising vapor holds implicit significance. There is a dark reality underlying these experiments, the awareness that they are dealing with energies and substances potentially dangerous or forbidden. Yet they proceed with extraordinary patience and observation. Candlelight dances on the walls, casting shadows that seem to animate each instrument and flask, creating a visual rhythm in harmony with the rhythm of the experiments. You begin to feel the subtle connection between time, attention, and scientific process, how patience becomes the key to understanding unseen mysteries. In this nighttime stillness, you understand that this laboratory is not merely a place of research, but a space where science, art, and mystery converge, where each gentle movement and careful observation yields knowledge that is both scientific and captivating to the senses and imagination. And within this atmosphere, you feel part of the gentle rhythm, sorbing the subtle energy continuously flowing from experiments that refuse to extinguish and resist complete explanation. As the night grows darker, you observe how the alchemists begin to make even more meticulous observations of the flask that refuses to cool. They write notes carefully, drawing symbols and diagrams seemingly understood only by eyes accustomed to perceiving subtle changes. You feel a gentle yet real tension in the air, an awareness that they are working at the edge between explainable knowledge and mysteries that may never be revealed. The glass flask radiates a steady heat, as if possessing an internal energy beyond measure, and every vapor rising from its surface adds to an inexplicable sense of curiosity. In the corner, bottles filled with shimmering liquids and powdered metals from previous experiments mark repeated failures and successes, a secret archive of a continuous, unending process. You begin to understand that every movement of the alchemists, from dripping liquid to stirring fine powders, carries profound purpose, not merely procedural. There is a dark reality implied in every action, an awareness that they interact with energies and substances that may be dangerous or forbidden. Yet they proceed with extraordinary precision and patience. The scents of chemicals, candle wax, and burnt wood create a captivating and strange atmosphere, calling your senses to absorb every detail attentively. You sit and observe, realizing how each subtle change, each glimmer of light on the flask, each rising vapor, is part of a larger pattern, a hidden rhythm of experiments in continuous motion. Candle shadows dance on the walls, as if affirming the subtle rhythm and sacred ritual that govern this laboratory. You begin to recognize that this place is not merely a laboratory, but a world of its own, where science, art, and mystery intersect. In the dense silence of the night, you feel connected to the alchemists long gone, absorbing the subtle energy and rhythm of the ongoing process, understanding that the secret of the flask that refuses to cool may never be fully revealed, leaving a gentle yet unshakable mystery. As the night deepens, you realize that every movement of the alchemists in this laboratory carries an almost sacred rhythm. The glass flask that refuses to cool remains the center of attention, its stable heat radiating energy felt throughout the room. You observe how the alchemists add new substances slowly, stir the mixture with gentle yet precise motions, and write notes with hands slightly trembling from intense concentration. Around the flask, there are residues of powdered metals, crystals, and settled liquids, all evidence of lengthy experiments. A mixture of successes and failures forming the secret history of this laboratory. The air feels dense, not only from heat or humidity, but from the concentration of intellectual energy and subtle yet powerful mystery. You sit for a moment, observing how the candlelight highlights small details, the glimmer on the flask's surface, and the shadows moving across the walls, all forming patterns that seem alive, breathing with the rhythm of the experiments. There is a dark reality hidden behind every action, the awareness that the alchemists interact with energies and substances that may be dangerous or forbidden, trying to understand natural laws that cannot be fully explained. The scent of chemicals blends with candle wax and burnt wood, creating an atmosphere that captivates the senses and evokes subtle but deep curiosity. Every drop of liquid that falls, every color change, and every rising vapor is part of a secret language understood only by those willing to observe patiently and carefully. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a place of research, but a space where science, art, and mystery converge, where patience, observation, and precision are keys to interpreting a hidden world. In the dense silence of the night, you feel yourself becoming part of this process, absorbing the gentle rhythm of experiments in continuous motion, understanding that the secret of the flask that refuses to cool is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of the limits of human knowledge, and a mystery that can never be fully grasped. The night grows deeper, and you watch the alchemists remaining calm amid the silence of the basement. They gaze at the glass flask that refuses to cool with complete concentration, observing every subtle change on its surface, the slowly rising vapor and the glimmer that appears briefly before vanishing. Every drop of liquid that falls and every movement of their hands feels like part of a sacred ritual, a pattern only understood by those who truly comprehend alchemy. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow the delicate movements, feeling the gentle tension that arises from such deep focus. The air feels dense with the sense of chemicals, candle wax, and burnt wood. Yet there is a strange warmth, as if the energy of the experiment flows through the room, touching your senses. You begin to perceive the dark reality hidden within. The alchemists are working with substances and energies that may be forbidden, manipulating elements that could have fatal consequences if misinterpreted. Yet they proceed with extraordinary precision, patience, and nearly obsessive observation. On the work table, remnants of previous experiments form a hidden archive. Powdered metals, crystals, and liquid residues showing repeated successes and failures. Tangible evidence of a lengthy, ongoing process. Candlelight dances on the walls, casting slowly moving shadows as if affirming the rhythm and focus flowing through the space. You sense that this laboratory is not merely a place of research, but a space where science, art, and mystery converge, where attention to the smallest details becomes the key to understanding a hidden world. You realize that every movement, every note written, and every drop of liquid is part of a secret language only interpretable by those who are patient and precise. In the intense silence of the night, you feel yourself becoming part of this process, experiencing the subtle rhythm connecting humans with matter, time, and energy, and understanding that the flask that refuses to cool is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of a living mystery, waiting to be observed, understood, and respected as the night deepens. You realize how every element in this laboratory seems to have a life of its own. The glass flask that refuses to cool stands in the center of the table, radiating a steady heat, as if holding secrets that cannot be explained. The alchemists continue their work with calm and precise movements, dripping dark-colored liquids, stirring fine powders, and writing notes filled with ancient symbols. You observe how thin vapors rise from the surface of the mixtures, forming patterns almost like a dance, candle shadows moving on the walls in rhythm with the slow and consistent experiments. There is a dark reality implied in their actions. They are experimenting with knowledge that may be forbidden, attempting to understand the subtle interactions between substances and energy, exploring boundaries rarely touched by ordinary humans. The scents of chemicals, candle wax, and burnt wood merge into an atmosphere that captivates, calling your senses to remain alert yet relaxed, absorbing every small detail with focused attention. You sit in the corner, noticing how every drop of liquid, every glimmer of light on the flask, and every color change becomes part of a secret language understood only with high precision and deep patience. You begin to understand that every movement, every observation, every note is part of a long process connecting humans with the hidden laws of nature. Candle shadows dancing on the walls seem to visualize the rhythm of the experiments, reflecting the almost sacred dedication of alchemists who have devoted years to this craft. In the quiet of the night, you feel yourself merge with the gentle energy flowing from the flask. Understanding that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a world of its own, where science, art, and mystery converge. And every action, though calm and small, carries profound meaning. You begin to realize that the flask that refuses to cool is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of knowledge, continually sought, a living mystery, and a secret only observable by those patient, precise, and deeply curious. As the night progresses, you watch the alchemists begin conducting more complex experiments, combining various substances and metallic powders, creating mixtures that produce thin vapors and subtle color changes, indicating deep chemical reactions. The glass flask that refuses to cool remains the focal point, radiating steady heat and energy that seems to flow throughout the room. You observe how they carefully adjust temperatures, transfer mixtures from one tube to another, and add new substances with near-obsessive precision. The scents of chemicals, burnt wood, and candle wax merge into an atmosphere that captivates, inviting you to notice every small detail with full awareness. You sit in the corner, following each movement, from falling drops to slowly rising vapor, recognizing the subtle patterns forming in the air, candle shadows dancing as if animating the experiments themselves. There is a dark reality implied in these actions, the awareness that they are working with energies and substances potentially dangerous, surpassing the knowledge of ordinary humans, yet carried out with patience, careful observation, and deep dedication. Their notes are filled with ancient symbols, lines, dots, and diagrams recording every subtle change, forming a secret archive of ongoing experiments. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a world of its own, where science, art, and mystery intersect, where patience, precision, and observation are keys to interpreting hidden phenomena. Candle shadows moving on the walls seem to affirm the gentle rhythm of the alchemist's activity. And you feel yourself part of this process, absorbing the subtle energy from the flask that refuses to cool. In the dense silence of the night, you understand that the secret of this flask is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of the never-ending quest for knowledge, a living mystery, and a dark reality, observable only by those patient, precise, and fully present in the rhythm of the experiment. As the night grows deeper, you watch the alchemists work with a concentration that is almost silent, accompanied by soft candlelight and shadows slowly moving across the stone walls. The glass flask that refuses to cool stands at the center of the table, radiating steady heat and energy that seems alive. You observe how the alchemists drip dark-colored liquids, stir metal powders, and write notes with hands moving slowly but surely, recording subtle changes that might escape ordinary observation. The air feels thick, filled with the scents of chemicals, candles, and burnt wood, creating an atmosphere both captivating and calming while sparking curiosity. There is a dark reality implied in these experiments. The awareness that they are working with energies and substances that may be dangerous or forbidden, yet they proceed with precision, patience, and careful observation. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow every movement, noticing subtle patterns emerging in the air. Candle shadows dancing as if animating the experiments themselves. Every drop of liquid that falls, every color change, and every rising vapor is part of a secret language understood only by those who are patient and precise. You begin to sense the subtle connection between time, attention, and the scientific process. How patience becomes key to interpreting hidden phenomena, and how mystery remains even after much has been observed and recorded. Candlelight highlights every detail, from the glimmer on the flask's surface to the residue of metal powders on the table, creating a visual rhythm and harmony with the experiments. You realize that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a realm where science, art, and mystery converge, where every small movement, though calm, carries profound meaning. In the dense silence of the night, you feel yourself part of this process, absorbing the gentle rhythm of the ongoing experiments. Understanding that the flask that refuses to cool is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of the limits of human knowledge and a mystery that continues to live. You begin to realize that every element in this laboratory, from candle shadows to the slowly rising vapor from the flask, forms a secret ecosystem observable only with great precision. The alchemists remain focused on the flask that refuses to cool. Noting how its heat spreads and how the vapor dances in the air before disappearing. Every drop of liquid falling into a tube or metallic powder mixture seems to have significant effects, creating subtle reactions readable only by those with extraordinary experience and patience. The air feels thick and warm, filled with the scents of chemicals, candles, and burnt wood. Yet there is a strange balance, as if the energy and mystery of the laboratory itself maintain a calm, controlled atmosphere. A dark reality is implied in every movement. The alchemists are working with substances and energies that may exceed ordinary human knowledge, attempting to understand phenomena rarely touched and often considered forbidden. You sit and observe, realizing that the notes, ancient symbols, and diagrams drawn are not just scientific documentation, but a secret language interpreting the complex interaction of matter, heat, and time. Candlelight highlights the glimmer on the flask's surface, metallic residues, and thin vapor rising slowly, creating a visual rhythm in harmony with the experiments. You begin to sense how precision, patience, and consistent observation form a broader understanding, and how each movement, though simple, carries profound meaning. This laboratory is not merely a research space, but a living world with a subtle rhythm where science, art, and mystery intersect, and where the flask that refuses to cool becomes a symbol of the unending quest for knowledge. In the silence of the night, you feel yourself part of this process, absorbing the gentle energy flowing from the experiments. Understanding that the secret of the flask is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a representation of a living mystery and dark reality observable only by those patient, precise, and fully present in the quiet of the night. You realize that this laboratory lives with its own rhythm, where every movement of the alchemists seems connected to the subtle energy of the flask that refuses to cool. You observe how they drip liquids with extraordinary precision, stir metal powders with slow yet deliberate motions, and write notes filled with ancient symbols that seem to hold secrets of the universe. Thin vapors rising from the mixture's surface form repeating patterns. Candle shadows dancing on the walls, seemingly affirming the rhythm and focus flowing through this basement space. The scents of chemicals, candles, and burnt wood create an atmosphere that is both captivating and strange, calling your senses to remain alert yet relaxed, feeling every detail with full awareness. A dark reality is implied behind every action. The alchemists are working with energies and substances that may exceed human knowledge, attempting to understand the subtle interactions between matter, heat, and time, exploring phenomena rarely touched and often considered forbidden. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow every drop of liquid, every color change, and every slowly rising vapor. Noticing the subtle patterns forming and the secret language understood only by those patient and precise. Candlelight highlights metallic residues, glittering crystals, and the surface of the flask radiating heat, creating a visual rhythm aligned with the experiments. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a world of its own where science, art, and mystery converge, where precision, patience, and observation are keys to interpreting hidden phenomena. In the intense silence of the night, you feel yourself merge with the gentle energy flowing from the experiments. Understanding that the flask that refuses to cool is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of a living mystery. A dark reality observable only by those fully present and the unending pursuit of knowledge, the night grows deeper, and you feel how every corner of the laboratory is filled with an almost sacred concentration. The glass flask that refuses to cool stands at the center of the table, steady heat radiating into the air, creating an aura of subtle yet tangible energy. The alchemists drip dark-colored liquids with slow yet precise movements, stir metal powders carefully, and write symbolic notes that seem to map the unseen interactions between matter and heat. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow their movements, noticing the thin vapors rising from the mixture's surface, the glimmer on the flask, and the candle shadows dancing on the walls, all forming patterns that seem alive. The scents of chemicals, candles, and burnt wood create an atmosphere that captivates, calming while sparking curiosity, as if calling your senses to absorb every detail. A dark reality is implied in every action. The alchemists are working with energies and substances that may exceed ordinary human knowledge, attempting to understand the hidden laws of the universe, exploring phenomena often considered forbidden or dangerous. Every drop of liquid that falls, every color change, and every rising vapor is part of a secret language understandable only through patience and precision. Candlelight highlights metallic residues, glittering crystals, and the flask's heat-emitting surface, creating a visual rhythm in harmony with the experiments. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a world of its own, where science, art, and mystery converge, where every small movement carries profound meaning. In the dense silence of the night, you feel yourself merge with the gentle energy flowing from the experiments, understanding that the flask that refuses to cool is a symbol of a living mystery, a dark reality, observable only by those patient, precise, and fully present, and a pursuit of knowledge that continues endlessly. In the quiet of the night, you begin to realize how this laboratory feels like a world of its own, where every detail from the slowly rising vapor to the candle shadows dancing on the walls forms a harmonious and meaningful pattern. The glass flask that refuses to cool remains the focal point, radiating steady heat and a subtle energy felt throughout the room. The alchemists drip liquids with high precision, stir metal powders with slow but deliberate movements, and write notes with ancient symbols recording every subtle change. You sit in the corner, letting your eyes follow each movement, observing how thin vapors rise. Candlelight highlights the flask's surface, and shadows moving on the walls seem to animate the experiments themselves. The scents of chemicals, candles, and burnt wood create an atmosphere that captivates, inviting your senses to remain alert yet relaxed, feeling every detail with full awareness. A dark reality is implied in every action. The alchemists are working with substances and energies that may exceed human knowledge, exploring phenomena often considered forbidden and attempting to understand the hidden laws of the universe. Every drop of liquid that falls, every color change, and every rising vapor is part of a secret language understandable only to those who are patient and precise. Candlelight illuminates metallic residues, glittering crystals, and the heat-emitting surface of the flask, creating a visual rhythm in harmony with the experiments. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a research space, but a living world with subtle rhythms where science, art, and mystery unite. And every small movement carries profound meaning. In the silence of the night, you feel yourself part of this process, absorbing the gentle energy from the flask that refuses to cool, understanding that the secret of this flask is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a symbol of a living mystery and an unending pursuit of knowledge. On the other side of the laboratory, an older alchemist unrolls ancient papers, notes from long-forgotten experiments. You see strange symbols and diagrams illustrating attempts to manipulate the flask's heat through combinations of metal powders, aromatic liquids, and precise placement of candle flames. Slowly, the alchemist pours a golden liquid into the flask, and shimmering vapor rises, forming spirals that seem to move with intent. You realize that every action, however small, is interconnected. Minor changes in the amount of liquid or the direction of stirring affect the shape of the vapor, its color, and the heat felt around the flask. In another corner, a young apprentice carefully records every motion, noting the time, temperature, and direction of the vapor. The scents of hot metal, burning wood, and sharp chemicals mingle, creating an atmosphere both tense and captivating, drawing your focus fully. Flickering candlelight highlights crystals forming on the flask's surface, casting dancing shadows on the damp brick walls. You begin to understand that this flask is not merely a glass vessel. It is a center of energy, a magnet for phenomena difficult to explain. There is a deep respect and slight fear, for every experiment carries risk, and only patience and precision allow the alchemists to harness this energy without destroying the flask or themselves. Here, in a space far from the outside world, science, intuition, and mystery converge, forming a rhythm only truly comprehensible to those fully present. and you feel like a witness to something greater than mere physical experimentation as the night deepens. You realize that the glass flask is not merely a vessel of heat, but the core of a phenomenon difficult to explain. The older alchemist drips silver liquid into the flask, and the thin vapor that rises seems to dance to an unseen rhythm, forming geometrical patterns that are astonishing. You observe from a corner, sensing a subtle energy moving through the air, like a gentle current only perceivable by truly attentive senses. At another table, the young apprentice adds copper powder while recording changes in color and vapor density. Each combination of materials appears to trigger a certain resonance, as if the flask responds in its own language. You begin to notice correlations between candle placement, liquid volume, and the shape of the vapor, a symphony blending science, intuition, and mystery. The sense of hot metal and burning candle wax create an atmosphere, both calming and tense, calling you to remain present and absorb every detail. Along the wall, ancient notes reveal that this flask has been tested by several alchemists before. And although they recorded the results, none truly understood the origin of its continuous heat. There is a profound respect among them. Even within scientific precision, they recognize the limits of human knowledge. As the vapor rises and candlelight dances on the damp brick walls, you feel a connection between experimentation and the universe, as if the flask is a bridge between the physical world and unseen mysteries. Every change in color, every wisp of vapor, and every crystal formed is part of a secret language understood only by the patient and attentive. That night leaves a deep impression. Although physics and chemistry provide limited explanation, there is an energy beyond ordinary science, a living mystery and a pursuit of knowledge that continually calls the alchemists to explore uncharted boundaries in the dense night. The laboratory feels alive with its own rhythm. You see the older alchemist pause, gazing at the flask that refuses to cool, as if awaiting a response from the inexplicable phenomenon. Slowly, he adds copper liquid into the flask, and a golden-green vapor rises, forming spirals that move like living creatures. Elsewhere, the young apprentice records color changes, vapor direction, and temperature at various points, ensuring every detail is captured. You notice how the candlelight reflects on the flask's surface, casting shadows dancing across the damp brick walls, and how the scent of chemicals, candle wax, and hot metal creates an atmosphere that is intense yet oddly calming. Every alchemist's movement appears sacred, as they work with extreme precision, aware that a small mistake could disrupt the flask's energy rhythm. You feel a subtle vibration in the air, an energy that seems to seep into your skin and clothing, calling your senses to remain fully present. Ancient notes scattered across the table reveal that such experiments have been conducted for decades. Yet the flask remains a mystery, defying all theories and predictions ever made. As the vapor dances and candlelight flickers, you begin to perceive that every element in the laboratory is interconnected. Candle placement, liquid volume, stirring direction, and even the alchemist's heartbeat influence the overall rhythm. This laboratory is not merely where science and art meet, but an arena where the mysteries of the universe reveal themselves, little by little, to those patient and meticulous. You feel part of this process, absorbing the energy of the flask, that refuses to cool, and understand that what appears to be a simple experiment is actually a complex dance between knowledge, intuition, and unseen natural forces. That night leaves a profound awareness. The secret of the flask remains alive, unsolved, calling each alchemist to explore the uncharted boundaries of knowledge as the night continues to turn. The atmosphere of the laboratory grows increasingly intense. You observe an alchemist placing fine silver powder around the base of the flask while writing symbols you have never seen before. When the powder meets the heat of the flask, thin blue vapor rises, dancing like living smoke, seemingly following a rhythm perceptible only to the most sensitive senses. At another table, the young apprentice slowly drips copper liquid, observing how the vapor's color shifts from soft green to bluish green, recording every subtle change meticulously. You feel a mixture of awe and unease as each experiment reveals phenomena that seem to exceed the logic of known science. Candlelight flickers across the flask's surface. Shadows move along the brick walls, creating a visual rhythm that appears to tell its own story. The scent of metal, burnt wood, and chemical liquids forms a layered atmosphere, calling your senses to remain present and absorb every detail fully. Ancient alchemist notes reveal that this flask has been tested by several previous generations, yet its secret remains intact, as if the laboratory itself chooses who is worthy of understanding this phenomenon. You begin to perceive the subtle relationships between candle placement, powder quantity, stirring direction, and the flask's heat, a visual language comprehensible only to truly attentive eyes. There is a respect and slight fear among the alchemists. They understand that the flask's energy can shift drastically with even the smallest mistake, as the vapor swirls in candlelight highlights the forming crystals. You feel yourself part of a process larger than mere physical experimentation. This laboratory, with all its enticing aromas, sounds, and lights, becomes an arena where science, art, and mystery converge, calling each sense to comprehend the secret language that lives within it. The night deepens, and the laboratory feels as if it pulses with the energy emanating from the glass flask. You see the older alchemist tilt the flask slightly, observing how the shimmering vapor spreads into the air, forming complex, layered patterns that seem to speak a language only comprehensible to those fully present. The young apprentice adds the final drops of copper liquid, and instantly the scent of hot metal blends with the strong chemical aroma, creating an atmosphere both intense and captivating. Candlelight highlights crystals forming on the flask's surface, casting dancing shadows on the damp brick walls, while green and blue vapors merge into swirls that seem alive. You realize that every element of the laboratory candle placement, powder quantity, stirring direction, and the alchemist's precision works in harmony, forming a rhythm greater than any individual experiment. Ancient notes scattered across the table indicate that this flask has been tested by alchemists for several generations, and although they recorded their results, the flask's mystery remains intact, refusing to be fully understood. You feel the connection between science, intuition, and phenomena that transcend human logic. Begin to realize that this flask is not merely a physical object, but a convergence point between natural energy and the unending pursuit of knowledge. Every second in the laboratory confirms that this experiment is not a mechanical action, but a complex dance between humans, materials, energy, and a living mystery. As the night creeps toward dawn, you feel completely absorbed in this process, absorbing the energy of the flask that refuses to cool. And understand that the secret held by this flask is far greater than what appears a mystery that lives on, calling every sense to remain present as dawn approaches. The laboratory remains alive with the subtle energy emanating from the glass flask. You watch the older alchemist staring intently at the flask, adding the final mixture of silver powder and golden liquid, while the young apprentice records every reaction with near-sacred patience. Green and blue vapors swirl slowly, reflecting candlelight on the forming crystal surfaces, as if bringing the damp brick walls to life with a dance of light and shadow. The scents of hot metal, burning wood, and chemical liquids fill the air, creating layers of sensory experience that call you to remain fully present, absorbing every moment with complete attention. Every movement of the alchemists feels meaningful. A slight change in stirring direction or candle placement produces a different response from the flask, as if the laboratory speaks a language only understood through patience and meticulous observation. Ancient notes scattered across the table indicate that such experiments have been performed repeatedly by several generations of alchemists. Yet the flask remains a mystery, refusing full comprehension. You feel a subtle connection between human movement, laboratory energy, and phenomena that seem to transcend simple physical laws, forming a dance between science, intuition, and living mystery. As vapors swirl, candlelight flickers, and scents envelop the room, you understand that this laboratory is not merely a place of experimentation, but an arena where the boundaries of knowledge are tested and the universe's mysteries are gently yet tangibly touched. In the quiet of the night approaching dawn, you feel part of a process larger than yourself, absorbing the energy of the flask that refuses to cool, and realizing that every phenomenon, no matter how small, carries hidden meaning awaiting those patient and attentive enough to perceive it. As dawn begins to creep through the small openings above the laboratory, you realize that the glass flask is not only emitting heat, but also seemingly influencing the entire space in unseen ways. The older alchemist bends over ancient notes, reading symbols that indicate a connection between the flask's thermal energy and classical alchemical theory, in which fire, water, air, and earth merge to create an imperceptible balance. You observe how the rising vapor forms spirals and repeating circles, as if the flask is attempting to communicate in a geometric language only comprehensible through intense observation and sharp intuition. The young apprentice adds drops of copper-colored liquid slowly, noticing how the resulting vapor moves differently when the candle's position is adjusted slightly, recording this phenomenon with remarkable detail. Candlelight highlights layers of crystal on the flask's surface, casting shadows that dance and form symmetrical patterns on the brick walls, as if the laboratory itself becomes a canvas for the interaction between energy and matter. The scent of hot metal mingles with the fragrance of candle wax and unidentifiable chemical compounds, creating an atmosphere both calm and charged with tension, calling you to remain present and absorb every shift, every detail, and every subtle vibration in the air. You begin to understand that the flask is not merely an experimental object. It is a center of energy guiding its observers to comprehend phenomena beyond ordinary measurement, compelling both alchemists and witnesses to interpret the interplay of matter, energy, and symbolism. Ancient notes indicate that previous alchemists recorded similar results, yet their interpretations remained limited. That morning, in a laboratory far removed from the outside world, you feel part of a continuous pursuit of knowledge, where the flask's mystery reveals itself little by little to those fully present and capable of sensing the living energy within as the morning light filters further through the laboratory's small openings. You notice that the vapor patterns rising from the glass flask begin to display a strange and almost mathematical order. The older alchemist leans in, studying the spirals while writing new symbols in the ancient notes open before him. You observe how each drop of liquid added by the young apprentice changes the rhythm of the spirals, altering the direction and density of the vapor, as if the flask is responding in its own language. The scent of hot metal mingles with candle wax and unidentifiable chemicals, creating an atmosphere that is calming yet filled with curiosity. Candlelight reflecting on the flask's surface highlights tiny crystals forming spontaneously, adding a visual dimension that makes the damp brick walls seem alive. You begin to realize that this laboratory is not merely a physical space. It is a network of energy where every action of the alchemists, every wisp of vapor, and every candlelight flicker interconnects in patterns comprehensible only with sensitivity and patience. Ancient notes reveal that similar experiments have been conducted for decades. Yet the flask continues to resist full understanding, displaying phenomena that seem to defy ordinary physical laws. You feel energy flowing throughout the room, an invisible field connecting the flask, the alchemists, and every element of the laboratory. Every movement, every temperature change, and every swirling vapor becomes part of a symphony, blending science, intuition, and mystery, leading you to the realization that what appears as a simple experiment is, in fact, a ritual connecting humans with phenomena greater than themselves. Here in the quiet of a laboratory far from the outside world, the secret of the flask that refuses to cool begins to reveal layers of mystery, previously hidden, calling every sense to be fully present and absorb the living energy. As the morning light grows stronger, you realize that the glass flask seems to influence not only the air around it, but the entire atmosphere of the laboratory. The rising vapor begins to interact with candlelight and wall shadows, forming shapes that almost resemble living creatures, moving slowly and gracefully within the warm, damp space. The older alchemist observes these changes with deep calm, writing new symbols in the ancient notes, attempting to capture the emerging patterns. The young apprentice drips liquid into the flask with remarkable precision, noting how each drop alters the direction and intensity of the vapor, as if the flask responds with consciousness of its own. The scent of hot metal mingles with candle wax and chemical compounds, creating an atmosphere both captivating and tense, calling your senses to remain present and notice every subtle detail. You begin to perceive that this laboratory is not merely a place of experimentation, but a space where physical laws, alchemists' intuition and mysterious phenomena meet in a complex harmony. Candlelight reflects on the crystals forming on the flask's surface, casting shadows that dance to an unseen rhythm, while green and blue vapors envelop the room with movements that are calming yet full of meaning. Ancient notes indicate that previous alchemists could only describe the results symbolically, without truly understanding this phenomenon. You feel the living energy of the flask permeate your body, awakening the awareness that every alchemist's action, every temperature shift, and every swirl of vapor is part of the universe's secret language. In the nearly sacred silence, you realize that this flask is not just an experiment, but a window into a higher layer of reality where energy, matter, and knowledge converge, calling every sense to be fully present and perceive the living mystery. The morning light streaming through the small openings in the laboratory begins to illuminate the swirling vapors around the glass flask, revealing patterns that are increasingly complex and multi-layered. You notice that the spirals of vapor seem to have their own rhythm, moving as if following unwritten natural laws, influencing candlelight, wall shadows, and even the temperature at certain points in the laboratory. The older alchemist writes new symbols, observing the coexistence of order and disorder, while the young apprentice carefully adds drops of copper liquid, noting how each minor change affects the vapor's movement and the color of forming crystals. The scent of hot metal mingles with candle wax and unidentifiable chemicals, creating a layered sensory experience that calls you to remain fully present. You begin to perceive the subtle relationships between the flask's energy, the alchemist's movements, and the elements in the laboratory, forming patterns that seem alive, communicating without words, inviting observers to grasp their hidden meaning. Ancient notes revealed that this phenomenon has been observed by several generations of alchemists. Yet the flask remains a mystery, refusing full explanation. Every swirl of vapor, every flicker of light, and every color shift in the crystals appears as a secret language of the universe, comprehensible only to the patient and attentive. You feel a subtle energy flowing throughout the room, influencing heartbeat, breath, and even consciousness, as if the laboratory and the flask are a single living entity. In the nearly sacred silence, you understand that this laboratory is not merely a place of physical experimentation, but an arena where energy, matter, and knowledge converge, revealing deeper layers of mystery, calling every sense to be fully present and absorb the unseen yet tangible rhythm of life. The morning light filtering through the small gaps in the laboratory begins to illuminate the swirling vapor around the glass flask, revealing patterns that are increasingly intricate and seemingly alive. You observe how each drop of liquid added by the young apprentice affects the movement of the vapor, creating new shapes that move slowly yet decisively, as if the flask is speaking through an invisible language of energy. The older alchemist bends over ancient notes, writing new symbols and diagrams, attempting to capture the coexistence of order and disorder. The scent of hot metal mingles with candle wax and unidentifiable chemical liquids, creating an atmosphere that is both tense and captivating, calling your senses to remain fully present and notice every detail. You realize that this laboratory is not merely a place of experimentation, but a space where energy, matter, and the alchemist's intuition converge, forming a complex dance that demands full attention. Every alchemist's movement, every change in the flask's temperature, and every swirl of vapor becomes part of a living language. A secret of the universe, comprehensible only through patience and intense observation. Ancient notes revealed that this phenomenon has been observed by several previous generations, yet the flask continues to resist full understanding, raising questions greater than the answers available. You feel a subtle energy flowing throughout the laboratory, influencing your heartbeat, breath, and consciousness, as if the room and the flask are a single living entity. As green and blue vapor moves gently, candlelight highlights spontaneously forming crystals, casting shadows that dance across the damp brick walls. And you understand that the flask's mystery is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a representation of living energy connecting humans, science, and the universe in a rhythm that is unseen yet real. The morning light warms the damp and silent laboratory, and you sense a subtle shift in the energy emanating from the glass flask. The rising vapor appears to move more slowly, yet in patterns that are increasingly complex, layered, and seemingly purposeful. The older alchemist gazes at the flask's surface with complete focus, carefully adding a mixture of metal powders and aromatic liquids, while the young apprentice lights additional candles to adjust the intensity of light and heat, observing how each change affects the vapor's movement. You realize that this laboratory functions like a living organism, where every element, light, heat, scent, vapor, and the alchemist's movements is interconnected, forming a rhythm that calls for full attention and awareness. Ancient notes reveal that such phenomena have been recorded by previous generations. Yet the flask continues to guard its secret, presenting questions deeper than the answers. The scent of hot metal mingled with candle wax and chemical liquids creates layers of sensory experience that are calming yet provoke curiosity, urging you to notice every subtle change. You begin to perceive that every swirl of vapor, every shift in crystal color, and every rhythm of candlelight is part of an energy language understandable only through intense observation and patience. This phenomenon seems to transcend ordinary physical laws, compelling alchemists and observers to expand their understanding. Feel the living energy and realize that this laboratory is a window into a higher layer of reality. In the nearly sacred silence, you feel part of this process, where the flask that refuses to cool is not merely an experimental object, but a living center of energy connecting humans, nature, and the mystery that continuously moves and evolves before your eyes. Dawn has now fully entered the laboratory, illuminating every damp and dusty corner, and you begin to sense a subtler layer of energy from the glass flask, as if it permeates every atom of air in the room. The vapor spirals that previously seemed to follow simple patterns now form repeating, almost geometric structures, giving the impression that the flask is not merely reacting to the alchemist's actions, but possesses a certain consciousness, a living and dynamic energy entity. The older alchemist writes new symbols with steady hands, observing how changes in candle placement, heat, intensity, and liquid quantity affect the movement of vapor, crystals, and light within the laboratory. The young apprentice carefully adjusts the metal powders and candle positions, following the subtle rhythm seemingly dictated by the flask itself, as if they are extensions of this living energy. The scent of hot metal mingled with candle wax and complex chemical liquids creates an atmosphere that is both calming and awe-inspiring, calling your senses to be fully present. You realize that this laboratory is not merely a space for physical experimentation, but an energy field that allows humans to touch layers of unseen reality, where ordinary physical laws seem guided by a higher rhythm. Every swirl of vapor, every flicker of crystal light, and every temperature change becomes part of the universe's secret language, awaiting interpretation by those patient and attentive. In the nearly sacred silence, you feel yourself witnessing something greater than ordinary experimentation or science. A living mystery that moves continuously, guiding every observer to recognize that the secret of the flask that refuses to cool symbolizes the unending pursuit of knowledge and the eternal energy of the universe. As the morning light fully illuminates the quiet laboratory, you gaze upon the glass flask that refuses to cool, feeling its gentle warmth as if it influences not only the air but also your heart and mind. Green and blue vapors swirl slowly, forming graceful and calming spirals, while the remaining candlelight reflects on the crystals forming on the flask's surface, casting shadows that dance softly on the damp brick walls. The older alchemist closes the ancient notes with deliberate movements, as if pausing the rhythm of the experiment, while the young apprentice gazes at the flask with awe and respect. You feel as if you are part of a process larger than yourself, where every movement, every wisp of vapor, and every flicker of light carries meaning that cannot be fully expressed in words. The scents of hot metal, candle wax, and complex chemical liquids still linger in the room, evoking a sense of calm yet curiosity, inviting you to reflect on the mystery contained within the flask's energy. In the nearly sacred silence, you realize that this laboratory is not merely a physical space, but a window into a higher layer of reality, where science, intuition, and mystery intersect. Slowly, you close your eyes, letting yourself drift into a melancholic feeling, recognizing that the flask that refuses to cool will remain a living secret, a symbol of the unending pursuit of knowledge, leaving you with a sense of wonder and gentle tranquility, as if the world beyond this laboratory is also enveloped in mysteries unseen yet real.